So
and I've had to go off video because my internet connection started becoming unstable.
right. So welcome to all of you to the ORSC webinar on really how and why organization and relationship systems coaching works. I'm Mish Middelmann, and
I'm Ronnie Ndlovu.
Yes, and we're coming to you from opposite ends of Johannesburg, and really welcoming all of you who are already on the call and welcoming those who might listen to this later as well. Our intention is to just take a few minutes to take you through a few ideas. You're welcome to unmute your microphone and ask a question, and we'll also try to make sure there's some time for questions at the end as well. And we're really hoping this is a useful and interesting experience for everybody, including ourselves. Big welcome to you all.
So welcome. And we will get right into it.
So we want to start off in our agenda with really what this thing called RSI is, this thing called Relationship Systems Intelligence. It's one of the creations of ORSC and CRR Global.
And what problems does it address? The opportunities it creates. We're going to be looking at that. And then we'll go on to look at how is it relevant in the South African context.
And what kind of lies under it? Why does it work? That's where we try to answer the question, why does it work? And we won't give you all the answers, but we want to have a bit of a go at this thing seems to work really well, and why. And then also some case studies as some examples of how we've seen it working on the African continent, and if there's time, we can go worldwide as well.
And towards the end, we're going to give you a taste of ORSC. So there's a little exercise we have that you go through. It's easy, it's accessible. And hopefully when you leave, our intention is that you leave with quite a good sense of what ORSC can do. And then there's, go ahead.
Lastly, we're going to just talk a little bit about the training. If you're interested in doing the course, really particularly a chance for you to ask questions, but also just giving you an outline of how you can learn more about this if you like what you've heard tonight. And once again, big welcome to you, those who are here, those who are still arriving. We're going to just rock and roll and move along to what relationship systems intelligence is really about.
Yes, and it kind of works, it contains 3 levels of intelligence. We know emotional intelligence and social intelligence, which Daniel Goleman made quite popular around the world, and also on invention and contribution to the world is this thing we call relationship systems intelligence.
One way of sort of summing it up is if emotional intelligence is mostly about me, about understanding and being able to hold myself in a conscious and aware and intentional way. And if social intelligence is a lot about you and my empathy for you and understanding for you, relationship systems intelligence is about the intelligence of the we, of the space between and the relationship between us, rather than just I or you, more about we.
Hard focus on the we, on the us, soft focus on the people involved.
So some key components of this thing are, it starts really with this focus on the relationship system, which we define as really a group of interdependent entities with a common identity or focus. So there's a relationship system when there's a family or a team or an organization or a community. And we're always focusing on that which is between the individuals.
Yes. And we know that as a relationship system exists, they are always in a state of evolving. They are always changing. So there's an openness to change in that relationship. It's inevitable anyway. One of the things that's really critical in that change is conflict. And we find that conflict informs that change, normally is a catalyst for it and usually leads to something useful for that relationship. It is a voice of that system, of that relationship.
We also, there's a lot of research that really underpins our approach about positivity. Not about being fluffy and avoiding the hard conversations, but really designing our communications so that for every hard conversation, there's more than one positive conversation that acknowledges strengths, that is inspirational, that is recognizing what is working. So no lies, no avoiding hard conversations, but just keeping the balance in favor of positivity has been shown to really generate far more productive teams.
It's like building a good, huge credit in your bank account for those days when you really, for those rainy days.
When you really do need to be tough,
yeah. And we also know that when you're working with systems, all you have to do is reveal what's going on for them so that you mirror what's happening to them for themselves. And what normally happens is because they are naturally intelligent and creative and resourceful, teams, organizations, communities will find solutions to issues they need to resolve.
And this is where this in ORSC comes from. You know, it's organization and relationship systems coaching. Really, the essence of coaching is about reflecting, mirroring to the client, whoever the client is, what's going on so that the client can make intelligent decisions. So it's not about me as the coach or the leader telling you what to do. It's about helping you to see where you're at and then enabling you to be creative about solving the problem. And this applies to the pure role of coaching, but also to the coaching stance of a business leader or an organizational leader.
Yes. And when we're talking of the you, we also really encourage that the you includes as many voices of that particular system as possible to have expression. It's almost like you are putting a puzzle together. The more voices there are, the broader the truth about the system you have, and the better chance or opportunity you have to solve the problems and make sound decisions that would take the team somewhere.
And this is so crucial when you look at the world we live in, particularly here in South Africa, but it's actually the same worldwide. Often there's only a few voices being heard, and the skill of the ORSC practitioner is to really bring all the voices out and hear the voice of the collective voice of the system, and to be resilient enough to be able to allow those voices, even when they are difficult, challenging, ones you disagree with, ones that trigger you. That's a lot of the personal growth in this work.
Right.
It works to address a lot of practical problems. And if you're thinking of using this in your practice, we really think that you might find it useful either if you yourself are a leader or if you are a practitioner who helps leaders. Because we really found that when we coach individual leaders, a huge proportion of the problems they're dealing with are about achieving results through others. It's kind of what the definition of a leader is. And we find it fabulously useful to work directly with the leadership team rather than just kind of prepping the leader who then goes and works with the team. With ORSC, we get to work directly with the whole team and address the issues there and then amongst all the people. And that, seems to really, really short circuit a lot of the problems that normally arise with individual coaching.
What has been proven time and time and again is that once people are in good relationship, when people are in right relationship rather, is that the task at hand becomes easier to do. So focus on relationship and task follows quite easily. And sometimes, when people have got issues with their team, it's hard for them to try and put everybody through individual coaching. First of all, it's prohibitive for many of the clients that we work with. So relationship systems coaching, working at different levels, at emotional intelligence level, at social intelligence level, and then of course at looking at the intelligence of the whole, allows all of those levels to be covered So most times our clients are able to access coaching as a modality to help resolve their issues. And so the cost-wise, it becomes quite possible to involve as much of that team or system as possible. And they can journey together as they grow, rather than having one or two people growing and outgrowing the team and leading to them not feeling like they fit in and wanting to leave that particular team.
Yeah. So yeah, we've really found it's a great value proposition to say,
Yeah.
and clients tend to look at the fee that we're quoting and go, it might seem a lot for an individual, but when they're dividing it by the 12 people on the exco or the 30 people in middle management or whatever it may be, suddenly the cost feels manageable to clients. And that's really, I think, given a lot of legs to the coaching world that is otherwise often under price pressure.
And then, of course, particularly in South Africa, we work a lot with diversity, and it's increasingly so, as you have people from different parts of Africa and actually different parts of the world coming through. So it's been effective where we've been called in to work with difference and helping teams embrace that difference. We've left teams really being able to collaborate across the broad spectrum of diversity sources and focus towards shared goals in a productive and meaningful way.
And we'll make some acknowledgements a bit later on of some of the underpinnings of the work we use around diversity that I'm sure some of you will recognize. We also, there's kind of an interesting thing about whether it's a company or even a non-profit or even at some couples and families, people get advice or they make strategic plans and they often don't implement them. So often you get that complaint like, we've made this plan before, or we've had consultants in before, but we didn't really implement them. The coaching approach has great power in that these solutions are generated by the client themselves. We're not imposing them, they generate them, and our job as coaches is to hold them accountable and to come back and meet them again and say, so you made those plans, how did they go? What obstacles did you experience? So we've really found the coaching approach, the long-term engagement and the non-directive approach has been very powerful in allowing our clients to actually implement what they want to do and manifest the solutions rather than just paying for plans that they don't do.
Hello?
Hi,
Yes.
Somebody else has joined. Yes, welcome. We're just going to keep rolling. Those who are joining, you're very welcome. We are recording this call and we're just looking at some of the problems addressed by this approach in the world.
And the last problem around conflict. We really hold that conflict is something good wanting to happen to a couple or a team or an organization. And we certainly work with people to really have the skills to sit with conflict, sit in the fire, so to say, and resolve those issues that most of the times would be avoided or left to just take over and shape the relationship. So we really work with resolving conflict in personal and working life of our clients.
And we see some really big opportunities that we've experienced in our own work, having taken up this work. Both of us have been doing this since about 2012. We've really found this work brings some of the cutting edge work around rank and privilege, around constellations, around what really enables systems to change and deal with hot conflict, brings those cutting edge things into the mainstream. So there are people using some of these cutting edge methodologies, but they often battle to use them in organizational settings and in kind of settled family settings. And ORSC really brings a kind of a lightness and a practicality that we found makes this work enormously more accessible. We've also found that, people say command and control, that's over. We don't do command and control anymore. But if you look around the world today, you'll see how many things are still being done by command and control, and that's not just the military. But I think most people will agree it's not enough. And this really opens out leadership into the other side of leadership that's really about holding the space for others to shine and for others to be creative and for alignment and innovation to take place in teams.
And we work with this across the broad spectrum of a couple, two people. It could also in a relationship, private relationship. It could be two people in a work relationship, CEO to CFO, or wherever there are two people. We also work with it across a broader set of people in a team, and we can cascade it down into a whole organization. It's scalable. And of course, you can take it into the broader community that the organization is, or even beyond the organization, help organizations interface with the communities in which they're running their businesses. So it's really scalable. And depending on what the client wants, we're able to adjust and find methods of really making sure that the coaching goes to those stakeholders they deem important to them.
And just, we're going to come to some case studies a bit later, but just some examples. We've been working with the sort of broad leadership team of a big bank in one of our neighboring countries, and it's the Exco plus the next level of management. There were 36 people in the room. We're working with the Exco of an emerging business that has, I think there's 8 or 10 people in the room. One of our colleagues worked with a fees must fall scenario where there were 75 people across the university and political parties and student leaders and deans and vice chancellors, etc. So just to back Ronnie's point about the scalability.
And we've also found that because you can work with different forms of relationships, one of the things we've increasingly been called in to do is to work with people who are competitors, but help them find a way of cooperating with each other. So it could be industry players who are looking at the common interests of the industry to which they belong. And yet they also need to compete at the same time. So they find ways of being able to build some form of cooperation and still maintain the competitive edge that is required for industries to thrive.
It's fascinating, that work. We've done some really interesting seminars on that. And just bringing it home to South Africa, we found a lot of our homies here have said, wow, this is in our African DNA. This thing about muntu umuntu ngabantu, people are people through other people. This is making that real, because Ubuntu has become a bit of a catchphrase lately. So what we're really trying to do is operationalize this principle that most South Africans subscribe to.
It's really taking that sense of we're coming from the us, from the winners, and really putting some practical, accessible ways of effecting it into the systems of the teams that we're working with, and leaving them with the ability to sustain that as they grow into collaborative communities or teams that are high performing.
And South Africa, we claim to be really good at relationship, and it's evident from the streets of Braamfontein that we're not exactly perfect at it. But we also would probably acknowledge that we're not always brilliant at task. We don't always get things done. So in this work, we really hold that balance of what advances the task and what relationship is needed. What advances the relationship and how does that get us to getting the work done? And I think that balance, the fact that this work is done completely globally, from the very individualistic cultures like the United States to the very collective cultures like Japan, and
Mm.
to South Africa, which kind of holds bits of both, is really a powerful thing.
Yeah. And we're also able to build a resilience that's really needed in South Africa. It's hot here. All you have to do is to turn on the radio and you see this really hot kind of space we're in, whether it's now our foremost leaders, whether it's in business or even just normal societal issues. They've all quite heated up because they haven't been given attention for a long time. So what we've been able to do with the segments with which we work is give them the skills, the ability to sit in that fire and still stay in the relationships that they are in and build a positive, strong way out of these issues that may seem insurmountable, but find a way of making it work. We've been successful in that respect as well.
You also, it's exciting to bring this work in here and learn from the world. And, this work was created by CRR Global. In fact, one of the partners who created it is actually South African born, but based in the US at CRR Global headquarters. And we've had leaders out here to run these courses from Japan, from Turkey, from all over Europe, from all over North America. So we are learning from the world in some way, but we also really, really believe we have something to teach the world. And we've had students here on the courses from South America, from all over Africa, from parts of Europe, as well as all over South Africa. And there's something we have here that is special. And indeed, some of the challenges of relationship that we have here, I think South Africa leads the world in what Ronnie just spoke about sitting in the fire. So we found that there is a two-way street here. And I'm kind of pretty inspired by what South Africa brings to the world in this work.
Really stepping in.
So a couple of quotes here on the screen. If those of you who've got screens, I know some of you are dialing in by phone, but those of you who have screens, there's some longer quotes, and we will email all these to you. But the gist of it is we had a group finance director on the last advanced series, and he just said, this stuff is so useful for me as a finance director, as a leader. I use these tools and skills as a leader. And somebody else said, it's in our African DNA to work this way. And she's really tackling the unblocking of township government state school education across both Gauteng and the Free State.
And experienced coaches have found it to be quite impactful and changes their practice considerably. So they come in with a lot of experience. They've been exposed to different modalities of coaching, and they come and experience this thing they call ORSC, and they're still fascinated, engaged, and learning something new all the time, and eager to take it out with a wider repertoire of skills to share with their client base.
So there's a long list we have here of some of the things underpinning ORSC, and we've tried to speak to those already as we've introduced them, but we just wanted to really take a moment to acknowledge some of the brilliant thinkers that and practitioners that on whose shoulders we stand. And particularly at the theory level, it's the Peter Sengi's of this world, the Joe Jaworskis of this world that have really advanced a lot of thinking around systems. What CRR Global always say is we're the experts in operationalizing that systems thinking.
Okay, and we've also quite a lot of work from Annie Middel's work. We've borrowed quite a lot and operationalized it, as you said, Mish. And one who is quite influential as well, particularly with our focus and relationship, is a gentleman called John Gottman, who has been doing research in marital and team relationships for decades. And so these have been infused with the others that you see there on the screen, have been infused into our coaching modality.
Yeah, and Bert Hellinger and Virginia Satir did all this work on constellations. You may be aware they actually got the original inspiration here in KwaZulu. They really started to understand constellations, and we understand constellations as really the language of systems. When people are together, individuals have voices and words, but the relationship system has a constellation of bodies. In some situations, people turn towards a speaker. In some situations, people scatter. In some situations, the group energy moves upwards into a sort of a brightness. In other situations, the group energy sinks down into a heaviness. Constellation work really enables us to listen to that language of the system and become skillful at working with it.
And what we do a lot of, particularly when we're working with people who have become stuck in their positions, that's what happens in a conflict, isn't it? That people get stuck in a position and they're not able to see or even hear the other. So with our modality, some of the tools in there, we're able to move people from being positioned, in those positions, to the interests that they hold in common, that they share. And normally when that happens, they're able to move on and start working towards a goal, shared goals or shared objectives around which they're collaborating. They don't have to like each other, but once they've identified those interests, they're able to work together.
So that's one of the practical skills you take out of our fundamentals course, is how to actually coach people who are in conflict towards finding those common interests, as Ronnie just said. So there's a longer list there. We won't read out every single one of them because it's a long list, but we've just highlighted a few that struck us. And again, a long story of ORSC. It was an amazing pioneering work done by Marita Frijon and Faith Fuller, who, as I said, are based in the US. And they've been doing it since about 2002 and run probably 1,000 courses by now, right around the world. Students from more than 30 countries, courses currently being delivered in at least 12 countries around the world. And over 300 people fully certified, it's trained to the highest level in this methodology.
And ORSC has been active in South Africa since 2012. Nearly 400 people have been trained in it and in various stages of the different advanced series courses that we have. Of 20 of those, around about 20 of those people have certified as ORSC practitioners. And then we have a very active practice community in Johannesburg and Cape Town. And this is actually increasing as more and more people take the course.
And we've got a website where a whole lot of the advanced practitioners have got together to collaborate, in fact, to engage in co-opetition. We're all practitioners in competition, but we're collaborating around telling the stories of the work we do. So that's at the web address orskafrica.net. And we really encourage you to take a look and read some of the stories. We'll point you to a few particular ones in just a moment, but there's a lot of information there and some great practitioners if you're looking for partners or if you're looking for coaches. And we promised to talk about why this thing works. And I just want to remind you, first of all, thank you all for being here and remind you that we're recording this, and also say that you are welcome to interrupt and ask questions. It's not an interruption, it adds to the conversation. We will pause a bit later, but if you just want to step in at any stage, unmute your microphone and just say, hey, I've got a question, I want to raise something. Having said that, we want to just look at broadly, why do we think ORSC works? And I'm just going to kick off because one of my heroes is Mish. In the early 1800s, he was probably the statesman of the region. There were these fabulous warlike guys like Shaka, and depending on your perspective, you might see some of the Boers as fabulous or not so fabulous. But they were warlike, and they fought, and they did some pretty cool things from their perspective. But Mish created a nation, basically by using an inclusive strategy. And inviting people to join him and saying, if you join me, I will give you some cattle and we will work together. And I just think there's something in the essence of that says, so we do live in a high conflict world where there is a lot of war and conflict and difference. But if we somehow hold a vision that includes people, that is the seeds of success for our world.
And we've seen it translate into other Sutu-related communities. That's the tribe from which Mish emanates from. but we've seen that even in decision making, they will not go forward with a decision unless they have consulted and engaged everyone who is part of that decision, even if it's to persuade them to adopt the decision or to bless it. So quite a lot around inclusivity in some of the nations around us here. And from Mushweshwe to staying relevant to current times, and ORSC is always incorporating the most cutting-edge research around relationships and how they work and what makes them stronger and successful.
I also think it's important that it's genuinely global. You know, often people say they're global and what they really mean is sort of Europe and North America. But if you look at the list, those of you who've got the screens, ORSC operates very successfully in Japanese in Japan. It operates in Dubai, in Turkey, in Egypt, in France, in French, all over Europe, Scandinavia, North America as well, recently China and Mexico. So there's something happening here that's spreading beyond the sort of usual privileged suspects around the world to a much more inclusive world picture.
Mm. And I really think it's the focus on relationship. We know from everything we've done that once you have the relationship sorted, everything else is easy, relatively easier. So relationship first and task just follows. Pretty clear about that.
And then we go on to, so if you look at this from a business perspective, what makes it work? And some of you may have come across the World Association of Business Coaches. They define coaching as promoting success at all levels of the organization through interaction with one individual. Now, we stretch that to say one individual or team. But I think we've already mentioned that this thing of promoting success at all levels and in a way that includes everybody, I think is what the world is needing today. And this is a direct way into it.
Yeah. And so everyone becomes a client because everyone has a bit of the truth of that particular environment. And it's in combining all of those truths that you start getting a clear picture of what's going on.
Yeah, and I put in that note about not the medical model because some of you may have either met or read or engaged with Mark Kahn, who's one of the real leading coaches in South Africa, and he's written a lovely book about coaching on the axis. And he keeps saying the strength of coaching is it isn't a medical model. It isn't about an expert diagnosing somebody. And it isn't appropriate in a business to treat one person as the sick person and try and fix them. It's about the system. So that's why we do it.
And we also know that while individual coaching is really good and it has its place. And we also know that individuals see themselves better in the context of the teams to which they belong. So when you coach an individual in a system, there are some aspects of them that are much more apparent and that they're able to then resolve that help the whole system and that individual at the same time.
Yeah, and we talked about diversity a bit earlier, and I mean, we don't have to tell you that business, certainly in South Africa, and I believe in the whole world, absolutely depends on getting a diversity dividend. It can't sit with diversity as a problem. It's got to sit with diversity as a source of creativity, innovation, alignment, productivity. And for that, some hard conversations need to happen, certainly in South Africa. People need the skills to do that, and ORSC really gives them the skills to do that.
And also the skills to deal with this rapid, complex change that we're facing as the global family. The tools we have enable people to sit in that and work together in really resolving the complex set of issues that are coming at us every single day, every single year.
Right. And in families and personal relationships, it really shifts this from coaches often, when you're coaching an individual, I found I kind of shied away from the couple stuff because I didn't know what to do because I only knew how to coach individuals. This takes it straight to couples. It normalizes conflict. It places the focus on the relationship and what the relationship needs. And I want to just tell you a personal story on this one. One of the things that got me into ORSC was, I'm in my late 50s, and when my kids were leaving school a few years ago, and we were kind of facing the empty nest, my wife and I, it was tough, and the wheels were coming off. And we'd had some couple therapy, which was great. It didn't quite get us over that very, very difficult stage in our what's now 30-something year marriage. We got ourselves an ORSC coach who we've never met, who coaches us by phone from the UK. And something about the way she coached us really helped us to help make a difference for us. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to do this training, because I've been a customer of it and I can vouch for it. I'm accelerating because I'm looking at the time here, Ronnie. But you go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Fine.
Okay.
So we have a few case studies. We have a few case studies that you can look at. We're not going to talk through all of them. I just want to talk about one very briefly. We worked with diversity and were called into one of our national firms here, service firms. And they called us in for a gender issue that they were having. Their male partners were always succeeding, and the female partners were always losing their business when they went away on maternity leave. And so they're trying to find a way of really including a number of the aspects that impact each gender differently. So particularly with wanting to build a better team or a better number of female partners. So we went in there, and just beyond dealing with the gender issues, we also addressed issues around race. We also addressed issues around sexual preference. And the whole organization started with skills that we left there, continued addressing these issues. It was quite interesting how the conversations were direct about how people had been impacted by a lack of awareness and sensitivity towards the diversity differences that existed in there. Ultimately, they culminated the sessions with co-creating ways of being with each other that would continue honoring the differences, but also drive productivity for that firm.
So I really want to encourage you to have a look at this. There's some rich stories here. Each of these links takes you to an interesting, quite short, but quite powerful story. And there are many more on the website, including some videos. I love the one from Egypt, where it was at the time of the what do they call it? The Spring Revolution or whatever in Egypt. And somebody went around working with the diversity of voices in Egypt, which is very much like South Africa, but fascinating to see it at the opposite end of our continent. So really encouraging to watch that video. And where we want to go from here is we want to give you a chance to just get a little taste of relationship coaching. Because you're all spread around the country and the world, we can't coach you as a relationship system. But what we're going to ask you to do is just do a little bit of personal reflection about a relationship that you're in that you would like to improve. And be aware you're not going to have to tell the story of the relationship to anybody, so you can keep it completely private. But it could be a business relationship or a personal relationship where there's something you'd like to improve. Not that it's completely blasted and broken. It could be, I suppose, if you want, but probably one that's still alive and kicking, but just where there's something itching and scratching. And
we're going to ask you to find a pen and paper for this activity.
Yeah. So I know it's hard for you to talk back at us, but we're just really asking you to take a moment to try this. And remember, you can always unmute your microphones to clarify or ask questions as we go. But I'm just going to take a few minutes to give you the experience of focusing on the relationship, and just, it isn't the same as what we would do if we were face to face with you, but it's just one way we thought we could do it through an online medium. So I hope you've got a relationship now. Think of one. If you haven't, just think of one that relationship you're in that you care about that has some scratchy points in it, business or personal. And then on that sheet of paper, think about how the relationship is right now and draw a big circle on the page that is big enough to just about fill the page, and think of that circle as the whole environment of the relationship. Then you're going to start by placing yourself first as a diagram in that circle. So if you're in the middle of this thing, put yourself in the middle. If you're on the edge, put yourself on the edge. And use the symbols as appropriate. If you're a man, draw a triangle. If you're a woman, draw a circle. And once you put yourself, put the other people, things, or events that are important in the environment of this relationship. There's almost certainly another person. There may be some other people over and above the person that we asked you to think about. So start drawing them. You can see it's a kind of a constellation. Drawing little symbols, triangles, and circles for the two or maybe more key people who are impacting this relationship. And if there's an event or a thing, like, you know, if it's a relationship, if you're a student and your relationship is at WITS, it would be the speech by Blade and Zemande would be a thing that had an event, or the arrest of the student leader over the weekend would be an event. Or if you're in the government, it would be the charging of Pravin Gordhan would be an event, as well as the relationships between the people in it. So I'm hoping that by now you've got at least 3 little triangles and circles, and maybe 5 or 6 or 7, I don't know, kind of scattered around in this terrain of the relationship. So at the moment, it's just those entities. But we said we're going to ask you to focus on relationship. So please draw in, starting from yourself, draw some kind of a line between you and each of the others in the diagram. Don't try and draw lines between every entity and every other entity, but just between you. What's your relationship to all the others? And use the key of a dotted line if it's a weak relationship, a single solid line if it's kind of an average relationship, and a double line if it's a strong relationship. And if there's conflict in the relationship, then put a kind of cross hatch on that line to show that there's some disturbance in that relationship. So do that now. Draw a dotted or a solid or a double line between you and each of the other entities in the diagram, and put sort of crosshatches across those ones where there's conflict. And we'll give you just another minute or so just to kind of put the diagram together. And when you've done as much as you can on that, just look at the picture. Look at the diagram and kind of zoom out a bit. Focus on the relationships. Focus on the pattern. Focus on your relationship systems intelligence. What are you seeing when you look at the picture as a whole? And ask yourself the question, what needs to change here? Try stepping a bit out of your own personal role and just looking at the whole setup and say to yourself, how does this need to change? And then we're going to go on to the second part of this thing, which needs another circle. So if you have only one sheet of paper, just use the back. If you've got another sheet of paper, please draw another circle. And in that circle, really this is, in fact, you better label the first one now and the new circle future or desired or want to be. In the want to be circle, use the same kind of symbols and the same process. So put yourself in the place you want to be in the environment of the relationship, whether in the middle or on the side. Put the other people in the kind of relationship spatially to you. It's kind of a metaphor for the relationship spatially where they should be. Look at the events and see how the people need to be relating to the things or events. So position them in the way that would make this thing better. And then again, draw in the kind of relationships you want to have. Again, remembering the dotted line for the one and the solid line. I mean, the dotted line if they're weak, the solid line if they're kind of average, and the double line if it's strong. And when you've put together these two, just take a moment to look at the two together and just see what you see when you look at the pattern of how it is now and how you want it to be. And again, zoom out. And we're going to unmute all the microphones and really invite you to speak up, because we've got a couple of questions for you. And I guess, and you can answer them now, you can give it a bit more thought. It's really, what are you learning about this relationship that you've been looking at? And you don't have to answer the details of the relationship because it can stay private, but what's striking you? What are you noticing as you look at this relationship and the way you want it to shift? Give you another question, and you're welcome to answer at any point. What needs to change? What needs to happen here? And what can you do about it? What are you willing and able to do about it to shift this relationship? I just really want to invite anybody to pop out to speak. You don't have to wait your turn, but anybody who'd like to just speak out and say, here's what I'm getting, here's what I'm seeing. We're hearing silence. Anybody want to bring their voice in?
There is a voice. And again, it doesn't have to be the detail of the relationship. It could be just broad reflection around the exercise itself. you could get specific about the relationship if you so desire.
What I've found when I do this is I kind of suddenly see things that I didn't see before. And I suddenly see actions that were not so obvious to me before. And I've noticed often that I kind of shift from pointing fingers at others to being part of the solution. Just wondering if anybody's getting an experience like that. We may have rushed you, you may not be in the mood for it, but really inviting anybody who's got something to say about this. Or if you like, you can ask a different question or make a different comment as well. We just really want to hear your voices if you've got something to say.
Hi, it's Rob. I just, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but I think what comes out of this is that if you want to shift anything, it's up to you to shift. You know, I think my position shifted in the circle as opposed to other people shifting around me. My position had to shift in the circle. So it's like, okay, if you want this to be better or to make any progress, you know, it's down to you to initiate or do something. And as soon as you move, then other things will move as well. But you can't sort of sit in wherever you are in the space and wait for other people to shift things.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And of course, obvious and yet not obvious, isn't it? I mean, it's often not obvious to people. Often obvious.
It's just what that awareness does. I mean, then you have sort of a choice in how you want to move around that circle. And you are conscious of the impacts that you are having in your relationship with the whole, with the us, with the we-ness.
Thank you. Thank you. Just mindful of the time, might be a good thing for us to show you the last couple of things we have to show you, and then still have a chance for any more questions at the end. But thank you so much for just bringing your voice in. We wanted to just share with you a little bit about this training. You know, we're excited about it. The two of us have put a lot of time and energy into learning these skills, and we're involved in these 5 modules. They start at a kind of intermediate level, and they go up to an advanced level. There's a fundamentals course the two of us will co-lead in Joburg in November and in Cape Town in March. And then there's an advanced series starting in June next year, which each module, one of us co-leads with somebody from somewhere else in the world. So we really bring you a range of global experts in this work who are working this from literally from Japan to China to Europe to North America to Africa.
And what you come out with is a wide range, a wide repertoire of skills that are practical, ready for use. Even as you finish the fundamentals, you're able to take those skills and apply them to some situations. Naturally, as you go on to the advanced series, you're able to apply more tools to more complex problems as you go along. But certainly very practical toolkits to use. And you're always working from the systems perspective. How do we coach the relationship, and how does it influence the whole, the winners that sits in a team or community or organization?
And it's there's a lot of support for you if you do the program, for you as a practitioner. Follow-up calls, getting coaching yourself, practice groups, consultation on applying it with your clients or in your workplace. So lots of background support for you. Stuff about the business of this approach. How do you sell it to customers or organizations? It's also all accredited with the ICF. You get a lot of ICF accredited coach-specific training hours. And then to get an ICF credential, you have the option of doing ORSC certification, which in fact goes way beyond ICF certification and includes ICF certification. Or you have the option of adding on the mentor coaching to the training hours that you have. So that it's also, by the way, the fundamentals is also the Health Professions Council. And we just wanted to talk a bit more about this course in November, to say You get a pre-course call just to kind of get your own head in gear about what you want to get from the course. 2 days of very strong interactive learning.
You get to practice some of the tools that we work with in the course. And of course, with some guidance from us on some of the nuances and things that you may need to look at to really get it right.
Yeah, typically we'll introduce an idea and then demo it, and then you'll practice it. And then we'll discuss how you can apply it in your workplaces. And then we'll get in for the next thing. Sorry, Ronnie, I think I interrupted you.
Yeah, the next one is on the, I'm rushing and I'm glad you're stopping me from stepping over some things. Monday, the 14th, and Tuesday, the 15th of November. It's not too far off, but truly a practical worthwhile course to attend. There are 2 of us facilitating, and we have assistants who help hold the room and actually bring quite a good energy that is helpful, inviting, and really supportive. And after that, we have a monthly application group call where people call in about, so we've done this fundamentals course, we've gone out there. These are some of the experiences we're having, and it's kind of a sharing of practice here. And how do we get around some of the obstacles that we're having? So it's a group really helping each other deepen their practice.
Right. And we wanted to say to you, if you're interested in doing this course, it's quite expensive. This technology has been a huge investment to bring to South Africa. If you want to do it this week, and we'll give you 12% off as a participant on this webinar, plus all those pre and post course benefits.
And just wanting to say, I mean, you talked of expenses, just want to say that really there is a rate of investment on that expense. Yes, the capital outlay initially is high, but you do get your money back when you go out to your client base, because the tools are needed.
And they really work. Yeah. So bottom line for us is we're always in relationship. We need to get skillful at it.
And we're part of a much larger estate system. So there's sharing of best practice from all over the world. And there's a huge interest by ORSCs everywhere to really help and inform the practice of those who are coming into the system as well. So lots of diversity, lots of innovation, wide range of experiences.
And the big thing is that it's not as if relationship challenges are completely fixed. It's not as though you just fix these things. You've got to get skillful about dealing with what Gottman describes as perpetual problems. Whether it's that students and academics don't always see eye to eye, or husbands and wives don't always see eye to eye, or production and sales don't see eye to eye, we have to get skillful about living and working with difference. And these skills
are
not learned.
We're not condemned into a particular way of being. We can unlearn some things and incorporate others that are more useful and helpful. And of course, CRR Global are specialists in taking this body of knowledge that other people have really thought of and that they themselves think of, or that we think of, and really making it accessible to leaders in businesses, leaders in communities, and their teams, and members of communities, couples, families, to really be in the right kind of relationship for them.
So, thanks, guys. I've got to go. Thank you.
Thank you. We're done, and we just wanted to check if you have any questions, those of you who are still here. Because we are glad to have had this chance to be with you, and we're wanting to make sure that if you have questions, you're welcome to ask. We know the time is up, so we also want to just thank you for participating. And we're here. We can stay on if you've got questions or comments. We will also send this to you. There's lots of links. There's contact details and web addresses and so on. So we really invite you to interact with us in any of these ways. Brand, thanks for hanging in there. Any feedback you have for us? I really appreciate you joining us. I know you're in the agile world, and we didn't get to mention that at all. But any comments from you?
Which I think it'll be very useful in our context. We primarily work with teams, and most of our work is with teams, but quite often in those teams' environments, it's their leadership and their relationship with the leadership that becomes the biggest constraint.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be useful in that context. Considering joining you in November, having a look at your brochure now. So I'll probably be in touch.
Fantastic. And just to say, there's a fabulous alliance between Agile and ORSC around the world, and you probably know some of the South Africans who've in your world who are also in the ORSC world, and that goes right around the world.
I work with Angie Doyle.
Oh yes.
And I think she's in your course quite recently as well.
Yes. Yeah, so we've got some local agile folks who are planning to do certification next year and really take it to the top level. So really excited. I come from an IT background as well, so I'm thrilled to have agile people on board, and always excited to share both the wisdom that you get from leading systemic change, which is fundamentally, as I understand it, your business, and the skills that we can bring around that as well.
So yeah, I'll probably be in contact. Mish.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you, Brandon. Hoping to meet you soon.
Okay, Ronnie. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. And good night. And I'll turn off the recording now, if I can find the right button.